Hey guys, I'm learning TFT and I'm sharing my learnings with you so that you can learn better and I can learn more effectively as well. In this video, I'm going to talk about Elise Reroll. And if you look at the stats here, you can see that Dynamo Nitro Elise and Braum Elise Reroll are the highest AVP in the game right now, with an extremely low pick rate of, if you add these two together, 0.3 compared to a lot of the other top comps in the game with far lower AVPs, 4.2 versus, if we filter by pick rate, you can see Vanguard Aphelios, Brand all have AVPs 4.4 range. Of course, the more something is played, the lower the AVP usually gets because it's more contested. But given that the pick rate is only 1 or less, many comps in the game are not that contested right now. And so you can definitely argue that Elise Reroll is underplayed by a significant amount right now. And if you go to the 3-star right here, you can see that Elise 3 has a 3.76 3-star place. And Braum 3, 3.64. Of course, Draven here is going to be skewed by Twisted Fate. Right here, 4.08. And one of the challenges with playing Elise Reroll, especially if you're angling Braum, is that you're going to be often contested by Twisted Fate, which is why if you can play it with Nitro as an alternative, it can be quite effective as well. So you can see here that the AVP for and win rate for Nitro is slightly better. But if you look at the stats at a more detailed level, it basically comes down to whether you can get to the T-Hex or not. Because if you don't get to the T-Hex, you're averaging like a 6th. Of course, this is survivorship bias, since the longer the game goes on, the more likely you are to get to the T-Hex. But oftentimes that means that you need to have a very strong Nitro start in order for this line to work out. And that's why a lot of top players and the pick rate for the Braum line is higher, because this is just going to be more consistent. But the downside is you might run into TF players. So in this video, I'm going to go through a breakdown of the conditions to play Elise Reroll, the board, the Nitro variation, augments, as well as itemization. Before I dive into that, and after I do kind of a high-level overview of Elise Reroll, I'm going to dive into a coaching session that I had with Grea, where we do a deep dive into a Braum Elise Reroll game, where specifically we are actually contested by a TF player for the Braum. And so we can talk through a lot of the nuances of how to navigate the line when someone else is taking Braums out of the pool. Before I dive into that, I'm going to go into the meta mindset of the day, stillness beneath the storm. So this is a psychological, philosophical segment, if you're new to my channel, where I talk about ideas that can help you get better at TFT over the long haul if your goal is to consistently get better and learn TFT. These are useful ideas for your life. And if you want to jump straight to the overview as well as the coaching session with Grea, take a look at the timestamps in the description below. So the impetus behind today's meta mindset, stillness beneath the storm, is I kind of want to share a story of my Tactician's Trials experience this last weekend, where I qualified for the tournament, and usually the morning of the tournament, I'm in Pacific time, and the tournament starts at 1 o'clock. They have check-in from 10:30 to 12. And so they have a tournament realm where you have to install a separate client. And I had installed it 2 days ago before the tournament. I even checked in the morning of to make sure I had the latest patch. You need to take a screenshot of it. And the catch was, for that morning, I had a softball. I'm the head coach for my daughter's softball team. and they had a game at 10:30. And so I had prepared my screenshot on my phone, and I was going onto Discord right when the game was about to start to insert the screenshot and check in. And I got a little check mark at the bottom of my message indicating from the admins that they had seen it, I was checked in. And so then I was like going, and this was the last game of the season for my daughter's softball team. So we had like an end of year party. I had to give a speech at the end, call out all the girls, hand out trophies. So I was already like kind of stressed out about that because this is my first head coaching experience. I've been the assistant coach for my son's baseball, basketball teams, but my first time being a head coach experience, and I really want to have that be a positive experience for the girls. And so I wasn't able to check my phone until around 12 o'clock, which is when the check-ins close. And when I checked my phone, I saw messages from the admin saying that my screenshot was no good and that it was a previous version. And I later found out that when you're on your mobile phone uploading an image, it default shows prior images that you had uploaded to Discord before, and that I needed to click a separate hidden link to open your like camera roll on your iPhone. And so the admins were like, sorry, you weren't checked in. So I was like frantically trying to message them to be like, I don't understand what happened. And I didn't figure out until later that I sent the wrong image. And so then they said they were going to add me to the wait list. I had to go home and uninstall and reinstall the client and patch it again. So I was going into around, I think it was around 12:50 p.m., still uncertain. They said they added me to the wait list. I wasn't sure if I was even going to get to play. And I was just super like disappointed and thrown off. Fortunately, I was able to get into the tournament, but my mental was completely checked out. Like usually when I am preparing for a tournament, I'll get home, and oftentimes because I have so much stuff going on weekends with my family, I usually like to get at least a warm-up game, which I didn't get to do. I usually am trying to meditate, do some stretching beforehand, which I also didn't get to do. And I've talked about this before in my kind of thinking about how to prepare for tournaments. For this weekend, I was just completely thrown into the storm, thrown off my mental. I was not mentally prepared entering the first game, and I just made a lot of mistakes in the first game, and that just set the tone, and I wasn't able to really recover. And so that's the concept behind today's meta mindset: stillness beneath the storm. When shit happens in life, how to maintain your cool, how to be still and calm and grounded when the storm and the wind and the rain is blowing around you. So first idea by William B. Irvine, a philosopher, in his book A Guide to the Good Life. Who then should give Stoicism a try? Someone who, to begin with, seeks tranquility. It is, after all, the thing Stoicism promises to deliver. Someone who thinks something is more valuable than tranquility would therefore be foolish to practice Stoicism. So key idea of Stoicism is that tranquility is one of the key focuses and priorities and values at all times. That the goal of examining and being introspective of your thoughts and your feelings is to find a tranquil state, to, when chaos is swirling around you, to be able to sit like this tree. Nassim Taleb, in his book Anti-Fragile, said, "An intelligent life is all about such emotional positioning to eliminate the sting of harm, which, as we saw, is done by mentally writing off belongings, so one does not feel any pain from losses." So part of this idea is what he talks about, the idea of negative visualization, which is you imagine that you lose everything in your life that is important to you. And that is a way of cultivating gratitude, but also by doing this concept of mentally writing off your belongings by visualizing that you have lost many of these things, then when you actually do lose those things, the volatility of the world doesn't affect you so much anymore. And so for me, this example of what happened this last weekend, I was grateful in the moment that I got into the tournament at the last second. This was like the admin messaging me at like 1:05 p.m. and saying, hey, you got in. And I have to jump straight into the game. And I just didn't have any time to mentally prepare. I was like relieved and happy I got to play, but also just extremely emotionally just all over the place. And I had not at that point wrote off like, hey, maybe it was okay that if I didn't end up getting to play in this tournament. It was a learning lesson for me that I gotta make sure that when I check in, I gotta check in again to make sure, because the admins messed up too, and I was kind of frustrated with them that they wrote the check mark in the first place and then they went back and checked that like, oh, this is actually not good, because I had the right screenshot on my phone. But when we can emotionally and mentally prepare ourselves, for example, one of my toughest things is, like in my 20s, my greatest fear was actually myself dying. And that's still a large fear for myself. But now a much larger fear is something happening to my kids. And what Taleb would argue is that I should mentally write off like something happening to my kids. Imagine the scenario that something, and I lost one or both of them, which is an extremely challenging exercise, right? Like, so for your life, whatever it is that is important to you, imagine you have lost those things. And oftentimes we don't truly appreciate what we have until we have lost it, right? But the more that you practice that, the more you are mentally prepared. And we talked about tactical anticipation in my last video, which is more at a tactical zoomed in level from a game perspective. But if you think about this from a life perspective, if you are mentally prepared to lose the things that are most important to you, you have visualized those things and realize that like, hey, life will go on, I will be okay. You will then be much more mentally prepared and stronger when those situations arise and not thrown off your game as much. Same thing goes for your LP in TFT, right? Like you might cling to or think about your rank or your LP as this thing that you're really attached to and defines your identity. But the more you write that off, the more you imagine you lose it all, the more you imagine starting from scratch, and you're forced to do this at the start of every set. It's a way to mentally and emotionally train yourself to have your identity attached to that thing not affect you so negatively, that the volatility of variance, low rolls, etc. don't bother you as much, and that frees you to perform more optimally. Daniel Kahneman, the psychologist, in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, said by broad framing, by like zooming out, is a way to counter loss aversion. So he said, if you have the emotional discipline that this rule requires, you will never consider a small gamble in isolation or be loss averse for a small gamble until you are actually on your deathbed, and not even then. This advice is not impossible to follow. Experienced traders in financial markets live by it every day, shielding themselves from the pain of losses by broad framing. So broad framing is this idea of zooming out, which is not that dissimilar from Taleb's idea of writing off your belongings. Zooming out, and if you think about this from a financial standpoint, if you think about traders or venture capitalists, like a venture capitalist will put a bunch of bets. Like let's say you make 20 investments. You are expecting the vast majority of those investments to fail. And failure in the VC world means that it does not get a 10x return or higher. You're really looking for like unicorns, right? You're investing some millions of dollars and you're hoping to get like $1 billion plus exit. And that's where you get the vast majority of your returns. And so when you think about this idea of broad framing is, okay, you have one investment that flunks. You have two investments that flunk. If you zoom in too much on that one or two investments, you can get really emotionally thrown off. But if you zoom out and you understand the context, right? You never consider a small gamble in isolation or be loss averse for a small gamble, right? Because you know that you have hedges, you have a lot of eggs in your basket. And so when you zoom out and you can see it from the big picture, separate the trees from the forest, it allows you to have a lot more tranquility and peace and be able to see that larger picture. Confucius said, when the wind blows, the grass bends. So in the situation over the weekend, the wind was blowing hard at me. There was storming, it was raining. Emotionally, that's how it felt. Learning to bend in the wind, learning to sway and not let that knock me over takes practice, but that's what nature does. That's what the strongest people are able to do. Thich Nhat Hanh, the monk, Buddhist teacher, said, "We have to learn the art of breathing in and out, stopping our activities, and calming our emotions. We have to learn to become solid and stable like an oak tree and not be blown from side to side by the storm." So again, being calm, stable, I probably could have done a better job in the moment of when I was uncertain of whether I was going to get to play. Doing everything obviously within my control, but then just closing my eyes, taking deep breaths, and centering myself, grounding myself, mentally preparing in case I was able to play. I think at that moment I was more frustrated, disappointed, somewhat angry at the admins, but part of it was obviously my fault as well. But just putting myself in a mental position so that if I was able to play, I would have been more prepared. That was definitely within my control, and I was not taking full advantage of the situation. It reminds me of like the NBA playoffs are happening right now. Oftentimes the coaches will shrink the player rotations, and so players that got to play during the regular season who were on the fringes of the rotation oftentimes don't get to play as much. And you never know when an injury might happen. Like this happened for when Steph Curry got injured. Jonathan Kuminga, who was during the regular season, got a good amount of play, especially before Jimmy Butler joined the team. But then he basically got relegated to the bench because his defense was kind of suboptimal. But he can be quite good offensively. And he hadn't played for a while, consistently contributed to the team, but he was mentally ready to jump in when he was called off the bench, right? Also reminds me of Jeremy Lin back in the day, where he oftentimes didn't get opportunities. But the moment he got that opportunity when he was on the Knicks, like he took full advantage, right? And that, for me, when you are in that situation, whether it's in TFT or in life, in TFT if you're playing a promotion game, right? You're maybe climbing to the next level, pushing the limits of where you've been before, maybe playing against top streamers for the first time. There can be a lot of anxiety and pressure that's built up. There's a lot of storm happening around you. Or for Jeremy Lin, playing in front of New York fans, right? Being thrown into the fire. And for him, he was always kind of on the fringe of going back to the D League at the time, not being able to get a contract. Every opportunity he had was like his life was on the line. And then on top of that, having the uncertainty of not really knowing whether you're going to get to play or not. And so it's so important in these situations in life because these small moments can define your life, can define your career, how you step up in these pressure situations. And I was not ready for this situation. And this, to me, will be a big learning lesson, because stuff like this is going to happen all the time in TFT and in life. And I will be using this experience to better prepare myself for the future, just like Jeremy Lin, right? Like, it's a story I want to share with my son, show him some videos of what happened with Linsanity, and how when you are able to be calm, be grounded and centered in the storm, and to take advantage of the moment, especially within uncertain situations where you weren't sure whether you were going to get to play or not, and then to be able to take life by the horns and ride it, the opportunity that is handed to you, like, that's what I want to be more mentally prepared for in the future. And that's kind of the ideas that I want to cover here and share with you. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this meta mindset, stillness beneath the storm, situations maybe in your life that you can apply this idea. And with that said, I'm going to jump into Elise Reroll. So I had mentioned before that it can be hard to hit Braum 3 if TF is contested. You can flex, by the way, you can flex TF and Elise. Replay was doing this a lot because many of the items that you use, like you can use Archangel, Gunblade, JG, Zonia, all items that can be used for both units, with the exception of Rageblade. And if you happen to hit a bunch of TFs, you can angle towards TF and Draven. Whereas if you see a bunch of Elises, or you find an MF early on, then you can angle towards Elise. So it's actually quite flexible for that purpose. And if Braum is contested by a TF player, then you can push levels, and I'll show you an example in the coaching session with Grea. By the way, Grea won the first Tacticians Cup of this set and will be participating, I believe, in Tacticians Cup 2 coming up this weekend. So highly respect his thought process on this. Or you could play the Nitro variant, which I talked about as having a higher cap if you can hit the T-Hex. But the itemization is going to be slightly different. And this comp is extremely stable in Stage 3 and for a lot of Stage 4. Stage 3, this is basically like if you hit Braum 2, Elise 2, you should be full streaking. Has the highest win rate here. And you can see that this is the TF board and the Elise board here, which you can flex between the two for the items. But the Elise board has a much higher AVP than the TF board. And so if you've been playing a lot of TF, the board is actually quite similar. You can start thinking about angling Elise, still play TF as your item holder until you pass it on to Elise. And you can see here that the Nitro Elise version is here and here. Another Elise version here. So basically, Stage 3 is dominated by Elise. And so at the very minimum, even if you're contested, you should be able to play this comp to get consistent top 4s, top 5s with much higher caps if you were able to hit your 3 stars. So here's the board. It's very similar to the TF board. You are basically taking out Elise, Morgana, and Jhin and throwing in TF, Draven, and Gragas at level 7. Or who is it? Shaco, actually, for 5 Syndicate. Or you could do 5 or 4 Vanguard and 3 Syndicate for TF. But the board's very similar to the TF board. And at level 7, you oftentimes won't have Misfortune yet. So you could throw in Gragas instead of Misfortune to have Bruiser and Divinicore for a very solid frontline. And this is a 3-cost comp, so you want to usually level up to 7 and roll there. Which oftentimes mean you're not getting there until 3-5, which is part of the reason that you can actually stabilize with a TF using these items in the early game. Or you can play around Morgana. Morgana is actually probably the best item holder early. If you get an early Morg 2 with a solid frontline, then that could be really strong since the items are quite similar. By the way, if you're building like blue buff Gunblade, you can, on an early Morgana too, you can flex between Elise, you can play towards Vex, you can play towards Yumi. Blue buff, with the addition of Elise as a viable carry, has become quite a good item slam early and quite flexible with a lot of lines that you can go down. You even if you're not playing Yumi reroll, you could go into Annie with the Amp Strategist board that is quite strong now as well. So lots of options over there. And at level 9, you want to find Aurora, so you take out Jhin for Aurora, get Gragas in, and then ideally you can find a Zac, but level 8 is just you don't have the Zac. And then at level 9 you could have the Zac ideally because you want more frontline, but you could just throw in any legendary. Like if you could throw in Garen to be able to get mods onto your units, that can work out as well. Lots of options. So this is the Nitro version. One thing you'll notice about the itemization is that at least with Braum, scaling itemization works really well. So Archangel and Gunblade, because Braum is super tanky, especially if you can build him with resistances. For Dynamo, you just need time, because the Dynamo just gives your units so much mana that they're just going to be pumping out damage. Elise's spell also works by... Let me actually pull it up. So fires 4 laser split and reduces magic resist by 5 for the rest of combat. So the more she casts, the more MR they are reduced, and so then the more damage she deals. So she is kind of a scaling champion in that regard. And if you have a super strong frontline in a Braum 3 plus scaling Archangel and Gunblade, you just become unkillable because you're just scaling damage in the backline. Aurora can throw in units. You are getting a lot of mana from the Dynamo, so it's just a stall comp, right? But more powerful probably than TF as a stall comp. So Nitro variation actually is a little bit different, because while ideally you can hit Shyvana 3 and get like a 200 T-Hex stack, this, even if you built it like this, Shyvana is far less tanky than a Braum. And Braum also gets a bunch of shielding from Vanguard and his spell. So he gets a lot of effectiveness out of this scaling. With the Nitro variation, your frontline's not as strong, so getting more damage, straight up damage, so JG Guardbreaker is more effective in the Nitro variation if you look at the stats. So the build is going to be a little bit different. You definitely want to make sure that you can get a bunch of 2-star Nitros in the beginning. I believe Dasik had a game where he had an early Elise out of an orb, took Heroic Grab Bag, duplicated an Elise 2 in stage 2, and then rolled onto 1 to 0 basically to try 2-star his Nidalee and Kindred, I believe, to be able to get more stacks to the T-Hex. One thing is that in the most recent patch, they changed Nitro. Oh, you can't see that here. They changed the Nitro stacks so that the amount of Chrome given to you at, this is 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, increased from 6 to 7. So that if you get 3-star Nitro units, then they will get you to that T-Hex faster. And the 4 Nitro damage was increased. So that's another reason that you want to build more damage on Elise, because this T-Hex will actually pump out a good amount of damage. And so you don't need this scaling as much. This is much more of a burst comp to be able to take down your enemy units with the T-Hex and the Elise. So you probably actually want to move the T-Hex on same side as Elise so they can burst down the same units. And then at level 9, you can get in Exotech. Or actually, you already have Exotech here. And by the way, this board can be extremely stable if you put, especially if you have something like Pulse Stabilizer, where you can have your Nefiri hold items, or you could just, if you hit Gen 2, Gen 2 will have more traits to hold items. But if you have like a pulse stabilizer on Nefiri, he could do good amount of work. Otherwise, you could just replace Nefiri with a Mordekaiser, which gives you both Exotech and Techie with Shyvana. And then at level 9, you want to get your 4 Dynamo in, 4 Nitro in, and then Sejuani and Mordekaiser. As far as augments go, Rigged Shop is very valuable under the Braum version. And then you can even play for a Gragas 3 if you happen to have the gold. Trifecta, very good for 3 costs. Memory Bank, the more you cast, eventually you get Zonias. And Zonia is one of the best items. Zonia and Mana Zane for Elise. These artifacts and radiants are also very good for Braum. Calculated enhancement, because Dynamos lack AP, would give them that, and you're basically playing a 4 Dynamo backline. If you notice, this setup here is actually quite similar. It's like 4 Dynamo, 4 strong frontline ideally. Usually it's without Zac at level 8. It's not that dissimilar from Vanguard Marksman. Vanguard Marksman is 4 and 4, right? 4 Marksman in the back, 4 Vanguard in the front. But Marksman already have a bunch of AD, so Calculated Enhancement is not that great for Marksman. But for Dynamo, you actually lack AP, and so Calculated Enhancement is a perfect synergy for that. And I believe Calculated Enhancement actually gives more AP than AD. So it's 50 AP compared to 40 AD. So AP units benefit more. And so Calculated Enhancement is almost tailor-made for the this Dynamo variant. Void Swarm, quite good. ZZ Rots in the stats as a support item are extremely strong. You can see ZZ Rot, Protectors, Locket, and Cleaver. So Locket just gives you a lot of frontline. The fact that these two show up highest in the stats basically implies this, again, is a stall comp. You just want as much frontline as possible. And Cleaver, because you're going to dual carry Misfortune, and then hopefully trio carry your Aurora in the late game. But Cleaver, because you really want to get 3-item Elise, 3-item Braum, you're oftentimes not able to get... And the system change in this patch means you're getting fewer items. So item augments are quite good too, like Buried Treasures. I'll talk about that in a sec. But Cleaver really saves you a lot of items because you have dual damage types, AP and AD here. And so Cleaver is quite good because you have that dual threat. And so going back to Void Swarm, you just need more frontline. And if you actually have Void Swarm, you don't even necessarily need to hit Braum 3. Like, then you can even tempo and play around. Hopefully, if you hit at least 3, great. But you can hit MF2, Aurora 2, and that might be enough to win you the game as well. And Buried Treasures, because you have so many carries, you really want to make sure you can itemize them all. Rolling for Days, Fire Sale, all of these are just econ. With 3-cost reroll, it can be hard to hit, especially if you're not on a econ encounter. So oftentimes, it's hard to take like 3 combat or some combination of 3 items in combat without econ, unless you are on like Crab Rave or Loot Sub, some encounter that gives you a lot of resources. So if you are short on gold, especially if you're not win streaking, you likely will need to pick up one of these econ augments to supplement to be able to hit. No Scout, no Pivot. If you happen to have an early Braum and Elise, that would be insanely good. Piercing Lotus, because you have dual damage types, and again, Shred is harder to come by now given the item system change. I think on average you have 1 to 1.5 less items now, so this can be quite good. Bulk, because of you just need more frontline, similar to Void Swarm idea. Ascension because it's a scaling fight. You really want to make sure you have good Braum items, which is basically Stoneplate and Warmogs is quite good, or Bramble, Declaw, Warmog is quite good. And yeah. By the way, the itemization is actually somewhat flexible. If you look at the stats here, I'll filtered above 1000 frequency. You can actually build Elise with no mana gen because you have 4 Dynamo. So, like, she's generating a lot of mana. Blue buff is still quite good because it lowers the mana threshold by 10. So she can basically cast more frequently, not just because you have so much mana coming in from Dynamo, and the lowered threshold makes her cast a lot more. And we talked about how that she lowers the MR over time. But you can actually build like pure Archangel Gunblade JG, for example, or Archangel JG Deathcap. But I think this is the best no mana build here. And you can see that the sample size is still like not where we want it to be to draw conclusions from this, but it's still quite good. So yeah, the build can still be quite flexible in that regard. So with that said, I'm going to jump into the coaching session with Grea. I hope you enjoyed this video so far. If you have thoughts, questions, feedback, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And I hope you enjoyed the video.
Okay, on augment. I guess I'll rewind and look at your like units held a little bit again. Yeah, you make 10, fine. So yeah, you don't have like 2 stars. You made 10. Definitely means you're like leaning towards some kind of like or loose streak, like scaling augment. Items, rod cloak. Yeah, cat 5 doesn't really make sense here. Doesn't do that much of the opener. I think Pandora's is reasonable. Pilfer I think is a bit on the weaker side as an econ augment. With 3 rolls, I would definitely rather default Pandora's and just roll Pilfer. Yeah, okay. Your odds of hitting a better econ augment if you want an econ augment are very high by just rerolling. Golden Fleece. You have an All-Star. I think this is pretty weak though. I would not take this. Definitely just keep rolling the economic. Too much value. Really interesting. No idea whether anyone's playing TF, but I'm sure that's like a reasonable line at least. You'd have a rod. Hmm. Part of that's just down to scouting, but with 1 roll left, I think Pandora's is like very reasonable and good enough that I also don't mind just rerolling too much value.
Also, with the system change in this patch and with 2 item component, feels like kind of worse with a reroll line. Is that reasonable?
I think it's the opposite. I think reroll lines actually are more favored in with fewer items because with reroll lines you have more power concentrated in like fewer units. Like you usually just have like 1 main tank, 1 main carry, whereas a lot of the 4-cost comps actually like are a lot more duo carry reliant. For example, Marksman Vanguard, you really want 2 carries itemized. Even Street Demon, you really want like a Jinx duo itemized with your brand into a Samira later, or Ziggs. Definitely can have like multiple itemized carries and reroll, like TF Draven, for example. But just like conceptually, if you're like putting all your resources into 3-starring like a couple of units, you're still gonna have like the items to itemize like those 1 or 2 units, and it's actually like generally more beneficial for you to compare the 4-cost comps back to your items. There's like some exceptions, and like some reroll comps, like maybe you hit a lot of 3 stars, you do want to itemize them all. But
I guess I'm also
I
referring to
think
like 3-2, for example, when for a lot of, like, let's say TF reroll, you want to ideally hit 2-star tank, 2-star backline, but with this 2 item component opener, and then maybe like on Creekbound, you're getting even less components. You might even only have like two items in stage 3 on your carry as opposed to maybe 3. So then your
yeah,
stage
the
3 might
thing
be
is
weaker.
Everyone else is gonna have the same number of items, right? Still,
Hmm.
like everyone still gets the same number of items. Like if they have like item augment and they have 3 items and you don't, then sure. But I think that can also happen under like the old system.
Okay.
But I do like Pandora's here. I do think one thing is the fact that there's fewer items definitely does make item augments like 2-1 more valuable. And Pandora's letting you kind of the item quality you get from Pandora's, letting you choose your items definitely is relevant as well. So sorry, just rewind a bit.
I wasn't sure if I should slam Morello here to try win or just read a rod.
Yeah, so it's not like a helpful answer, but the thing is, like, I don't think there's really a correct answer here in that because you have Pandora's, you can play like anything, and whether like you should do this or that, it kind of well, part of it is just scouting. Like maybe you want to play an uncontested line, or maybe like there's a line that might be good in theory, like TF, but then you can't play it because it's contested. But yeah, I actually do like slamming the Morello though. I think Morello is just like such a flexible item. You always want to anti-heal. Basically using every comp. I think slamming Morello's fine. But it's like again, it's not a helpful answer, but like you can do a lot of different things with Pandora's. Like try to play towards this comp or that comp, and it's just like really hard to say whether any of it's wrong or right. Obviously, there's ridiculous things that you do, and you're like, oh, okay, you shouldn't do that. But it's kind of just about what you want to play towards. So, but I do like the Morello. I think your board is good enough. Alistar 2, Morgana 2. That slamming here is strong, and Morello is like an item you want to slam. So. Saving tier definitely leans you towards like some kind of AP. I know you mentioned earlier you kind of want to like try Elise. Definitely fine. Other AP comps like Brand or Vex are also definitely fine from the spot. Kind of just comes down to like scouting and what items or like what units you natural, stuff like that.
Yeah, there are two other board of directors players, so I would have probably defaulted Vex if I wasn't trying to like kind of lean towards Elise. So once I saw the Vex players, then I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go Elise. But then someone else called TF at the exact same time.
Yeah. So in theory you could play like literally any comp in the game from the spot still. It's just a Morello. You don't even have to say the tier, but definitely agree with not wanting to like over contested Vex and yeah, I think Elise reroll is pretty dependent on reeling Braum as well. So if there's a TF player, it just usually is not going to work out too well for you because Braum is too hard to hit. Oh, I definitely wouldn't mind just like playing towards like a default comp, like say Street Demon or Vanguard Marksman from here. But you definitely still just have like the option to basically play anything from this type of spot. So yeah, your item doesn't really matter because you have Pandora's. But yeah, I would definitely not want to play towards Elise knowing there's a TF player, so I would probably just try to look for either a Street Demon or a Marksman Vanguard spot from here. Or
So the other option I was considering was Yumi. I haven't really tried playing much Yumi either.
yeah, I think Yumi's like a bit awkward. I wouldn't like try to force it without either like some kind of like Nefiri spot or like naturaling Yumi's. I think there's actually like some potential there, but the comp can be like a bit awkward if you're not playing around Nefiri.
Okay.
It's almost like masquerading as like kind of like fast 8 comp, except you're also trying to hit Yumi 3. But if you actually are playing around Nefiri, like reroll, then it makes a lot more sense. You can like kind of reroll Yumi together, duo. It is a lot stronger, just like fast 8 and play amp now, because pretty big buff to 4 amp. But even then, I think it's like a pretty hitting Samira reliant comp because kind of get your 3 Street Demon together with Echo Nico, and then even if you like want to cut Nidalee for 4 amp or versus 5 amp, either way, it's just like having the Samira is such a big deal versus not having it. So
Okay.
kind of like a very gambly comp. And that, yeah, whether you hit Samira or not, it's just like the other 5 costs. You end up using your size on Braum, so yeah, I mean, you slam Archangel. I guess at this point you're like kind of just committed towards the Elise, or definitely committed, at least like mentally when you
Yeah, I was really hoping I could just keep streaking,
slam
but
the
that didn't work.
yeah, when you slam the size implant on Braum. I mean, I think I like passed over this a bit too fast. Maybe I should look at your spot again. 3-1. Um, yeah, I think it doesn't really make sense to commit your size implant here because like you commit to a Braum, you don't even have
I don't have Vanguard.
don't even have Vanguard in. Like you should just like you want to Warmog the Alistar here anyway. So I think you kind of got baited by like wanting to use the implant size on like a permanent unit, which in your case is Braum. But I think your board is just straight up stronger, just putting the Warmogs on Alistar. Like, even if you implant the Braum, you should still put the Warmogs on Alistar, probably. I think
Yeah.
your board's just stronger.
You think that was
2
fight
Bruiser,
diff?
another nerd. Definitely could have been, yeah. The fight looks pretty close. I mean, the Jin's full HP. Hard to say. I think Big Friend just does, like, nothing here. Replication's kind of weird. You have Pandora, so technically it's just, like, 3 components instead of, like, 3 of one specific component. But, I think Magic Roll's just on average better than Replication. Magic Roll is like a pretty just strong augment on average. It's just you might not get what you want, but one of the like big low roll scenarios with Magic Roll is like you get 4 of a component that doesn't do anything for you, like sucks, but you have Pandora's, so that can't even happen. I think Magic Roll is actually really strong here. I would just default that all the rest.
Okay. Yeah, the 3
Glass
duplicators would be
Cannon.
really good.
Yeah, Glass Cannon is not that enticing on 3-2. It's like fine, random combat augment. Definitely would still lean Magic Roll over it. Spirit Link, this augment is completely busted. Even at high HP, it's like pretty strong.
Even after the
Secure
nerf?
game well. Yeah. I'd probably still lead Magic Roll here. Specifically, I just think Magic Roll has a lot of value in your spot, on top of like being a good augment. But I would say Spirit Link is really enticing. Bulky is good, but bulky with 3 hold though. I'd probably still go Magic Roll. I think there's a lot of like potential for some crazy high rolls. But yeah, 4 components for gold augment is just really, really good. Yeah, I think definitely makes sense to just reforge here. You have Pandora's anyway. Reforgers don't matter. You can hit something. Do you think the game is like kind of awkward though? Because you're kind of committed to this Braum, but this player is definitely not pivoting off TF. So Braum 3 is like pretty hard to hit, and that just makes your game awkward long term.
Yeah, I think my game plan at this point is just to push tempo, go 8, get a top 4.
Yeah, that's definitely reasonable. Not like I think the like Elise Braum board definitely like falls off really hard if you don't have any 3 stars. So you don't have like a super clear like direction you're going if that is your plan. But yeah, at this point you definitely are like committed to this type of line. So kind of just have to make the best of it. And yeah, regarding the Braum, like I think Marksman Vanguard is pretty popular. I guess they don't play Braum usually, but like sometimes they just buy a Braum too because they didn't hit the other stuff. I guess it's not a big concern though. I think you should probably be slamming Blue Buff here. I think Blue Buff is really good on Elise. in this type of line, and it's also really good on Morg. You're using as your item holder. You just like move the Morello. I know you probably do want like to finish a tank item, but especially if you're like playing towards the tempo, just like save HP, whatever line. It makes a lot of sense to just make the blue buff here, try to win these 2 rounds. It's like a huge spike on your board, and
Okay.
it's also good later because like with these items, you're kind of just committed, right? You're just playing Elise
Like I think for
or like maybe
Dynamo,
Aurora.
this is like JG Archangel Gunblade since you have so much mana gen, but like I guess blue buff isn't that much worse that if I'm playing tempo and I'm not trying to play for first because the other guy's contesting me Braum, I should just slam it.
Yeah, I think like waiting on Gunblade is like way too greedy. I don't think Gunblade's even like that insane. It's just like this like I mean I haven't looked at stats, but like the blue buff kind of actually works well with for Dynamo. It's not like Shojin where you get like less value out of it. But I mean the main thing is like blue buff is just insanely strong on Morg to carry, which is what you have right now.
Right.
And you're again you said you're like playing more for tempo than try to like 3-star cap out.
So you'd move Morello over to Elise blue buff more.
Yep, I would just move Morello.
Okay.
Right him the Morgana. Like yeah, I think yeah, I'm making Gumlet. I think this like I know you have Pandora's, but I think this is like Bisque greeting a bit too hard in that like the reason I'm not making blue buff there is to like go for a 3rd tank item, but not making blue buff to go for Gunblade I think is just like really greedy. And doesn't really make sense in your spot.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean I said earlier, I think you definitely like tunneled too hard on just like having the Braum as a permanent unit with the implant size. Like I think you would have been stronger this entire stage, just Ormoxing the All-Star, calling it a day. But like I think you could have even like potentially sat and just not like rolled that deep if you aren't so committed to the Braum. So I guess yeah, I think it doesn't make sense to roll that deep here. Thing is yes you really want this Braum too, but kind of
Okay
like
with
the only thing you're
Gragas.
rolling for. Like you could just tank Gragas, and I mean the main thing is like every other unit on your board is 2-starred. 1 MF is a huge hit, so you're basically just rolling for Braum and MF. Exactly. Those are like the only 2 units that really like do anything for you in the spot.
Mm-hmm.
You rolled like so deep, which to be fair, gold might not be that valuable for you if you can't hit Braum 3 anyway and cap out, but you could either like econ up or you can either save more econ and just use the econ to try to like hit at least 3 potentially, even if you don't hit Braum 3, or like push 8. I think like digging this deep for literally just Braum and MF is pretty weak. It's just
Okay.
like not super efficient use of your rolls. But I understand like why you want to, because yeah, you put the implant size on Braum, you have all the lines on him. You're like, oh, you really need this Braum too. But I think rolling as deep as you did here is like really inefficient
Mm-hmm.
in this spot.
Yeah, and I don't have Syndicate
Like,
on Braum either.
yeah. Tomb Raider, little buddies, that's just not a thing. Definitely have to reroll that instantly. I think this comp can't fit too many bronze traits, and Knock Today does nothing anyway, so you kind of just have to roll that. I'll think Dioku is reasonable. I don't think it's even that insane, but definitely reasonable. I would take it over Refactor, or at least like start rolling the Prismatics. I think the only 5 cost you particularly want is Aurora. Um,
Do you really value
can't
uplink
really.
with Dynamo?
No, but it's just a reasonable combat augment is the thing. Like Refactor is just really weak here. I think.
Okay.
But, the the big part of this is like 2 gold augments is generally a lot better than 1 Frizz. I know there's like some extra gold attached to it, but you need your gold options to be either really bad or your Frizz option to be like amazing to want to take the prismatic. 2 gold augments is just like a lot stronger than the prismatic. Uplink is like mediocre, but it's still combat. Dual Q is like reasonable. You get a shot hitting Aurora. Items are not bad for you. You can't like low roll that hard because even if your items suck, you just reforge with Pandora's. But, like the main thing is refactor is just like really low value here.
Okay.
Like 4-2 refactor for a unit that's like not even gonna beat 3-star ever probably. Like you just refactor tank item on a unit that's never hitting 3-star. It like actually makes you pretty strong stage 4, I think, but at 94 HP your game doesn't end on stage 4. Like you're not playing to like just survive stage 4.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
yeah,
you're more okay with that play if I had a higher probability of hitting Braum 3? Or even then you would still
kind
have
of.
it lean
It's
right?
just like even then I don't like refactor. It's like it's like when I said that it's just like it's just more about the concept of like yeah, a Radiant on a 3-star a lot better than a Radiant on a 2-star, but even then like I really don't like it that much. I think 4-2 refact in general is just really weak. The exception is if you're like picking some kind of super giga carry. Generally, this applies to melee carries, like some sort of super lifesteal tank, you know, Rengar type unit that becomes unkillable, or like one shots everything if you stack enough like power into it with Radiance. But this is just more of a conceptual thing. Just like Radiant Refactor on 4-2 for just like a random tank Radiant on a like normal tank, or like a random backline Radiant is just really weak as an augment. It's just really underpowered.
Okay.
This augment is pretty much only strong on 4-2 if you're like making some kind of Exodia carry, such as generally melee carries, but at this point I think you're probably just committed to like pushing 8 and then just ending the game on 8. Play like 4 Dynamo. 3 Elises is like a bit too few with your econ amount. It's really weird. You are win streaking, you have a lot of HP, but I think like it's really hard for you to kind of like progress your board in a meaningful way.
So you have sold the Jarvan
Really,
and Darius pair to make econ there?
yeah, absolutely. I think your plan is just at this point to push 8, find 1 MF, and Aurora, and you find her is good as well if you find her. But
With
I think
that
it's just like way
logic,
too hard to
do
scale.
you push 8 here just to try to preserve streak and roll a little bit
Yeah,
to...
absolutely.
Okay.
I would absolutely push 8 here. I think the big thing about that is 1 MF spikes your board really hard.
Yeah.
Because
Or Aurora.
yeah, this rating commit on Braum, you don't have a single yes, Aurora does spike as well, but like just having Syndicate in against Braum I think is actually like really big. Which like the Alistar is dead anyway. Like Darius Alistar doesn't make a diff, so just adding an MF to your board. 4 Dynamo is nice as well, but just adding an MF to your board and getting Syndicate in is actually like a huge spike, I think.
Yeah, it also comes back to bite me later because there were, I think, 3 other MF players in this lobby.
Yeah, I think it's just like you could potentially hit at least 3 here. It's just the amount of like time and gold investment into it when it's also not even guaranteed versus just like trying to spike immediately. I think it makes more sense to try to spike off finding an MF in the spot. Yeah, I like Redemption, though. Yeah, kind of weird. You actually do want to like try to itemize just MF in the spot, but I think Redemption definitely does a lot more on your board now. And
Wait, I
if
don't know if
MF
you guys
is
already talked about this, but I think like the
go ahead.
positioning, because all of your units don't have splash damage, you like really want to spread out as much as possible.
Oh yeah,
Against Vex.
Just against anything like
it's
Vex,
just
Brand,
in general, there's like
Fate.
basically if you basically like by default you would probably just want to like spread out your units, your backline, like say like one unit every other hex. It's kind of just like a default. You only do this type of like concentration when like you have a specific reason to. Like if you want to like focus down one side or something like that, you want your units to like hit the same target, stuff like that. It's just like random AoE just hits you. And as Asa said, like your units don't really care about focus firing because their abilities like do AoE.
So then,
Morgana
are
and
you
Elise.
gonna put Braum in the center and like be concerned about getting wrapped, or like should I just move all my units to the front line and not greed the stoneplate value as much? Like how would you
One
organize
thing
the
you
front
do
line?
is just like in this, but it's in this specific setup. I think you just like put Morgana like 2 left of Jin, or like Morgana where Jin is 2 left, but like basically you can just like keep your like front line where it is, and then just like move the back line a bit.
Okay.
And, like even if they wrap, it's just like wrapping your random Jin, and they still have to get through like an Alistar 2, for example. Realistically, like you actually want to scout for that type of stuff, because you can look at each individual board in your pool and think about like whether they can wrap you, or like whether it actually matters if they wrap you. And then you can also like position your extra backliners like Alistar, Ross to pick up the potential wraps. If it's like some super strong unit like a Neferi 3, then that won't work. But if it's just like a random, like some random frontline unit potentially wrapping you, you don't mind your just like extra random tanks just picking up and stopping that wrap. But it's just Vex is definitely one of them, but there's just a bunch of random AoE abilities that can punish you if you're clumping like this, and if you don't specifically want to focus fire, then there's no real reason to clump the backline like this. If it's like a 1v1 matchup against a melee carry and like for some reason it's like hard to prevent wrap, this actually can be something you can do, like clump to make it easier to mount the wrap. But as a default, I would definitely just spread out the backline.
I assume if I got MF with MF items that I would want Elise and MF together, since that way they can clean up units together.
I don't think so actually. Like just the way Elise and MF target, like they just kind of spray their AoE anyway. They don't like single target focus really.
Okay, so then would
So
you put
I would
MF
still just
in the
spread.
corner or Elite? Like it'd
I think
be
MS. I can't really explain why. I think MF generally wants to be on the third hex from the edge on either side. So like
oh,
A3, A5,
interesting.
like where
Okay.
Jin is, or on the opposite side. I think it's like not bad if you corner her necessarily, but I think those hexes are like good. And if you have a
Okay.
specific reason to, you can corner her. Otherwise, I would just put her on either side there. I think I don't really look at positioning stats, but I think someone like mentioned that like the meta TFT positioning stats like are there. But
Wait, I think the stats is just because like most people put their strongest carry in the corner, and it's just like TF3 has a much higher win rate than MF baseline, than like Fast 8 MF.
yeah, maybe. Not sure. I mean, I will say that when I play MF, it's usually as a dual carry also, so kind of like checks out. I don't know. There could be like something to do with angles, or I could just be making things up. I'm honestly not sure. It's like really hard to tell.
I'm not sure either.
So I assume here that I'm rolling for at least 3 over pushing 9, given that the other Braum guy's still alive. Or not given, but
Yeah, we can just
despite the
rewind a
fact.
bit.
I think
Wait,
he
real
only
fast, you have to
has.
pause here.
Hmm.
Alright, you go ahead, but after over, I want to show something like on this fight.
Oh, go ahead.
You go ahead
Yeah.
first. Your question.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. No, I got confused. So yeah, about the spot. Yeah, I think you should just re-roll for at least 3 at the spot. In fact, I would like. I'd probably just roll to 0 for at least right now. Thing is, going 9 is really really expensive. So at least 3 is just going to be a bigger spec than going 9. Like you would probably just limp your way to 9 with like a little bit of gold. You're not that likely to hit a 2-star 5 cost, and you don't have like that much to put in. I guess you could like drop Gragas, maybe, or something. 1 random legendary or 2 random legendaries, but for how much gold it takes to go 9 here, it just isn't that efficient. And you already have 6 Elises with this much gold. It's like pretty likely you hit. It's just your biggest spike by far. You can also hit like 1 Aurora, MF2 potentially. You did say MF was contested, but potentially. And
Okay. Do you have the rolling calculator like odds memorized for this scenario? Like
Oh no,
if
I
you
just
roll
use
down
my.
here, what do you think are the odds that you get at least three copies? Is it like 15 gold per copy right now?
I'm gonna be honest. I have literally no idea. It's just like it's just like really inefficient to try to level here. I think, and then
Okay. Well, I guess I meant in the context that you said you would send it to 0 here.
oh sorry. I think yeah. I kind of like simplify my words. I think what I meant was like I would roll to like probably 30 or 40 and see how many hit. Like if you roll to 30 or 40 and hit 0 copies, then like your odds of hitting are not that great. Like 3 copies and 30 gold. If you like hit if you hit like 1 or 2 Elises in like say the 30, 35 gold you're rolling, and you roll from 65 to 30, then I would just send it to 0.
Okay.
But yeah, the main focus is definitely like rolling for Elise. I think makes a lot more sense than trying to push 9 here.
Mhm.
Okay, Asa, I think you
Yeah,
can go
I
ahead.
just want to show like I
Whatever
think
you-
this fight is like a really good example of like this positioning. Just like just watch this first Aphelios
Okay.
ult. And yeah, it's not just Aphelios, it's like Brand, Ziggs, a lot of units.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
I definitely
Yeah,
got
it's only
My
like
whole
4
zero
board.
value.
Aphelios. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it
And
hit
it's
3 of
like
your backliners, and if you spread, it's only hitting 2 backliners at most, which is like something.
Yeah.
There's like, but yeah, there's like other units as well for sure that he said that can kind of hit the clump.
I wasn't sure whether to go for MF item here or second tank, but I didn't have any options for MF.
Yeah, there weren't any real MF items. Yeah,
Like Hodge, would you take Hodge over a second tank item if it was
I'd
available?
actually prefer to take tank here, particularly because you have one loose tank item already. Because if you take MF item, then you're like one random tank item here, one random MF item,
Yeah.
which is generally less efficient than just like concentrating 2 tank items, and then you can even get it 3 tank items by the neutral round or after the neutral round. So yeah, definitely agree with taking the tank item here.
So the TF player died at this point. So now I'm thinking hopefully I can
Yeah,
actually go
so
for
Braum 3 is definitely an angle here for sure. With that being the case.
would you have made the Gragas there or not?
Oh yeah, we can go back and look for sure.
And I guess even
I
related
think
to that, would you have even made the Leona too?
I think I wouldn't have made Leona. The thing is, Ross is like a really actually no, I would definitely make Leona. The thing is, Leona 2 is like by far the best user of these tank items you have. Redemption, Steadfast, and then the third tank item you get next round. If you have like no extra tank items, then Ross 2 is probably more efficient than Leona. It's just like really nice to have on your board. No item Leona doesn't do that much, but Leona is actually like a lot better with items than Rost. And you could either I mean, yeah, you just drop the Rost here for sure.
Okay. I also wasn't sure if swapping one of the stone plates for Steadfast would have been better on Braum.
I think leaving this setup is completely fine. Like
Okay.
not super efficient to have like double stone plate, but like moving the stone plate off also doesn't really counter that much. I think it's completely fine. But yeah, I mean, Ace already mentioned, but yeah, splitting backline like makes a lot of sense. Probably lose anyway, but you are getting your backline AoE'd by Phalios.
Yeah, I think I normally do spread, but it's just specifically and I guess I'm slamming a lot more stone plates lately, but when I do a stone plate setup, I'm just lazy, I guess, against wrapping. I just gotta keep an eye out more on
I think
that.
by default, it's like you're not even that scared of wrapping, with the stone plate. Like you can just like have your like Gragas and Darius to like catch the wrappers only like if there's for example, really strong like Neferi or something like that,
Mhm.
then you can like put extra attention to trying to deal with that. But
So you're okay with
you like
just
shouldn't be out of your
Braum
weapon.
center and then spread backline all the way across every other one, and then just put like your Gragas and your Darius on the sides.
Yeah, like Gragas here, and then like Darius on the same hex on the other side. Usually good enough to pick up wrappers.
Okay.
Like, if the wrappers are just like random tanks or stuff like that, only like when it's a really strong melee carry, basically, that you should put, like that you have to put extra care into like how you deal with the wrap. Uh, yeah, okay, you missed. I think double redemption is like not that efficient. I think the heal stacks, but the damage reduction doesn't. So
Hmm.
I'll just like go Warmogs here, Leona. Kind of minor,
Yeah.
but I think it's better. The mana is pretty good on Leona, but I think Warmog is pretty nice. And yeah, you just end up dying the last stand. We go through and think about the game a bit more.
The 4-2 augment was basically a waste of a prismatic.
Yeah, I think Refactor was pretty weak in your spot. Say that. Hmm, I still think you probably should have just like tried to push 8 earlier, try to spike on 1 MF. I think you end up winning out stage 4 anyway. Maybe you did. I mean, this is probably not finding MF diff, but yeah, it is kind of weird because the TF player did end up dying, so you actually had the opportunity to like go for Braum 3. But even then, I think like stabilizing earlier, going 8, and then like going for Braum 3 afterwards is also.
And not rolling so deep for that Braum too. Since Gragas 2 was probably good enough.
Yeah, I do think you like overruled in 4-1. Like funny enough, I think it was fight diff. You kept your streak because of it. Like you had a really close fight, but like conceptually, you're rolling this deep is just not efficient in your spot, and like I think like committing too hard to Braum was kind of the reason for it.
Yeah, I
But
figured
it's
if
kind of
I
like a
was
weird.
committed at this point, I'm pretty much doomed if I don't keep streak for this stage.
Yeah, it's just like again, I think there's like some hindsight there in that it ended up being fight diff. I think a lot of times just like hitting just this Braum too doesn't even make the fight diff that much. Like again, you could just like play around Gragas 2 tank, for example here. Your board's like so
Even if it's
upgraded that
fight diff here, you're like kind of likely to lose because a lot of people spike with 2-star 4 costs on this stage, so you might not streak the whole stage. And fight diff is 4 gold, but then just like making 50 instead of 10 is also 4
yeah,
gold.
basically it's just like not that likely that just this Braum 2 is gonna be the fight diff. Like it ended up being the case, it's not that likely. You didn't have to like play around the Braum 2 or the Braum as your tank for this stage when your board is already this upgraded.
Okay.
It's like it's a 100% chance you lose 4 gold from interest, and maybe like a 30% chance it's fight diff, 30% chance you win anyway, 30% chance you lose anyway. And then that's a 4 gold diff, so.
Actually, the context is like your board's just so upgraded. The Braum is the only non 2-star on your board, which is definitely not always the case. Like if your board was a lot less upgraded, then I would support rolling, even like rolling very deep as you did. It just becomes very inefficient when you're 6 2-stars, 1-star.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's everything. Rolling deep. I do think you should have like made the blue buff on stage 3. It didn't end up mattering. Like you kept your streak. fine
I'm kind of
anyway.
curious
But,
about what you guys think just Elise like best itemization is. Is that something that
that's
you
just
feel
a stats
confident on?
question, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I mean, any other questions, concerns, whatever about this game or in general?
No, that was super helpful.
Not, we can move
Thanks.
on. Yeah, no problem.